Farrah Fawcett walked away from the biggest show in America because of one episode. When Charlie's Angels exploded onto television in 1976, her smile and her hair became as iconic as the show itself. Viewers saw her as untouchable, radiant, and seemingly destined to remain America's golden girl forever. But that shimmering image hid something else, an exhaustion building behind the cameras, a frustration that no amount of fan mail or poster sales could erase. Farrah was more than a symbol. She was an actress with ambition, a woman with dreams far bigger than what the producers had planned for her. And as the months wore on, she began to feel trapped in the very role that had made her a star. Then came episode 15, Angels on Wheels. On screen it looked like fun, an undercover roller derby adventure. But what viewers didn't know was that this episode marked a private turning point for Farrah. What happened during the filming that made her walk away from the most popular show in America? Why was this the moment she decided she could never go back? And why has the truth remained hidden for so long? When Charlie's Angels premiered in September of 1976, it didn't just perform well, it exploded. Overnight, the show became a phenomenon. And at the center of it all was Farrah Fawcett. Her feathered blonde hair was copied by women across the country. Her poster, featuring that million-dollar smile and a red swimsuit, sold in the millions, becoming the most iconic pinup of the decade. More than Jaclyn Smith's elegance or Kate Jackson's seriousness, Farrah's image defined the series. She was the angel everyone talked about, the face that drew in advertisers, and the reason viewers tuned in week after week. To the public, this was the dream every actress longed for: instant fame, endless attention, and a future paved with opportunity. But what looked like a blessing quickly became a burden. Farrah wasn't just filming long hours on set, she was expected to be everywhere at once. Magazine covers, talk show appearances, product endorsements. Her schedule rarely gave her time to breathe. The studio didn't just want her to star in a hit show, they wanted her to become a brand. The trio dynamic that ABC promoted only deepened the imbalance. Kate Jackson, billed as the smart angel, was respected by producers for her input and seriousness. Jaclyn Smith, the classy angel, often kept a low profile, but Farrah was cast as the fun angel, the glamorous centerpiece. She was marketed as the one who made Charlie's Angels sparkle. This positioning meant the pressure fell squarely on her shoulders, and while it fueled the show's ratings, it also made Farrah feel trapped in a one-dimensional role. By the middle of the first season, the cracks were already forming. Farrah's husband, Lee Majors, was himself a television star on The $6 Million Man, and the couple's schedules rarely lined up. She'd leave home early in the morning, spend 14 hours shooting, then face the press in the evening. Fans saw dazzling red carpet smiles, but privately, Farrah was exhausted. She began to confide in close friends that she felt like she was being used as an image rather than nurtured as an actress. What made it harder was how quickly her co-stars adapted to the grind. Kate Jackson thrived on set, often giving producers suggestions and receiving respect for her discipline. Jaclyn Smith balanced her workload by avoiding controversy, staying out of conflicts, but Farrah stood in a different spotlight. The executives leaned on her the hardest, knowing her face sold the show. The imbalance only deepened her sense that she was carrying more than her share of the weight. By the time the ratings had cemented Charlie's Angels as the #1 hit of the season, Farrah was already questioning how long she could survive the machine built around her. She had dreamed of dramatic roles, serious films, and longevity in Hollywood. Instead, she was skating on the surface of fame, suffocating under the expectations that came with being America's angel. And then came the scripts that made it all too clear where producers saw her value, not in complex acting but in spectacle. The clearest example was waiting just around the corner, in a storyline that would put her on roller skates, inside a derby ring, playing the part she had already grown to despise. For all the glamour that came with Charlie's Angels, Farrah Fawcett never saw herself as just a television star. Before the show, she had studied art and theater, and she dreamed of roles that challenged her characters with depth, stories that revealed something about human struggle. She wasn't naive about Hollywood's obsession with beauty, but she hoped her breakout would open doors to serious films. What she found instead was a machine that kept narrowing her options until she was little more than the poster that hung on every bedroom wall in America. The scripts for Charlie's Angels rarely gave her room to grow. Week after week, she found herself in bikinis, glamorous outfits, or high-action stunts that highlighted her looks but not her craft. The show's formula leaned heavily on spectacle. 3 beautiful women solving crimes in disguises that were more about attraction than authenticity. It worked for the ratings, but for Farrah, it was suffocating. She was being treated less like an actress and more like a product. This difference became clear on set. Kate Jackson, often called the smart angel, pushed producers for stronger scripts and got a reputation for her seriousness. Jaclyn Smith, cast as the classy angel, was content to maintain her image without rocking the boat. But Farrah, stuck with the label of the fun, sexy angel, felt pigeonholed. Producers leaned into her popularity, doubling down on storylines that showed her skating, swimming, or dressing up rather than delivering dramatic lines. The imbalance gnawed at her. What stung most was the lack of respect. While the studio was happy to plaster her face on merchandise and cash in on her popularity, they weren't willing to listen when she asked for more substantial work. She began to see that she was being boxed in as the glamorous centerpiece of the Angels trio, rather than nurtured as an equal talent. For someone with aspirations beyond television, the show felt less like an opportunity and more like a trap. The strain showed in her personal life, as well. Lee Majors, her husband, was already an established television star. Farrah's grueling schedule and the studio's demands left them with little time together, and conversations at home often circled back to her unhappiness with Charlie's Angels. She confided that she felt drained, disrespected, and increasingly out of step with the career she wanted. To Majors, the solution was simple. If the show wasn't making her happy, she had to find a way out. Yet leaving wasn't easy. ABC executives saw Farrah as the jewel of the show, the reason advertisers paid top dollar. Even whispers that she might be unhappy sent producers into a quiet panic. They had built an empire on her image, and they had no intention of letting her slip away. But Farrah's dissatisfaction was growing harder to hide. By the middle of the first season, people on set noticed her mood souring, her patience thinning, her spark dimming. Then came the script for episode 15, Angels on Wheels. To the network, it was another chance to showcase Farrah's athleticism and charisma in a flashy undercover role. To Farrah, it was something else entirely, a reminder of everything she wanted to escape. When the script for episode 15, Angels on Wheels, landed on Farrah Fawcett's desk, it might have seemed like a typical Charlie's Angels assignment. The premise was simple. The Angels go undercover at a roller derby to bust a criminal ring. On the surface, it was colorful, campy, and perfectly in line with the show's brand of flashy disguises and light-hearted spectacle. But for Farrah, this episode carried a weight she could no longer ignore. From the start, filming was grueling. The roller derby sequences required long hours on skates, choreography for the derby brawls, and multiple takes under hot studio lights. The stunts were physically demanding, leaving Farrah bruised and exhausted. More than that, she saw the episode as the perfect symbol of what the producers wanted from her. Not dialogue, not depth, but a glamorous performance wrapped in glitter and sweat. Instead of showcasing her acting, the focus was on her body, her smile, and how good she looked in motion. The contrast between how America saw the episode and how Farrah experienced it was striking. To millions of fans watching at home, it was just another fun adventure. The Angels looked lively, the disguises were outrageous, and Farrah's athleticism was dazzling. But behind the scenes, she was seething. She felt stripped of dignity, reduced to a spectacle in short shorts and roller skates, playing a caricature instead of a character. This wasn't the serious actress she wanted to be. It was exactly the role she had been fighting to escape. Her frustration didn't go unnoticed. Crew members recalled Farrah's visible irritation during the shoot, her weariness between takes, and the way she avoided small talk. By this point in the season, the tension between her and the producers had already been simmering, but Angels on Wheels made it boil over. She began telling confidants that she couldn't keep doing this, that the role was draining her spirit. The physical toll of the roller derby sequences only sharpened her determination. If this was what ABC had in store for her, more spectacle, more stunts, more shallow disguises, she wanted no part of it. What sealed her decision wasn't just exhaustion, but clarity. Angels on Wheels revealed in sharp relief the gap between what she wanted and what the network demanded. She dreamed of dramatic roles on the big screen, of challenging scripts that would prove she was more than a smile and a hairstyle, but the producers weren't interested in nurturing that ambition. They wanted the poster girl who could skate, fight, and pose her way through an hour of television. By the time the episode wrapped, Farrah knew her path was set. She could stay and become the image the network wanted, or she could risk everything to pursue something greater. To the audience, Angels on Wheels was just another installment in a beloved series. To Farrah Fawcett, it was the final straw, the episode that made her walk away from Charlie's Angels. The cameras captured Farrah Fawcett, smiling, skating, and dazzling audiences in Angels on Wheels. But once the lights dimmed and the costumes were packed away, the private toll became impossible to ignore. Farrah was carrying the weight of being America's favorite angel, yet inside she was running out of strength. Her husband, Lee Majors, was one of the few people who saw just how deep the exhaustion went. He was no stranger to the pressures of television. The $6 million man had turned him into a household name. When Farrah came home late at night, drained from 14-hour days and endless retakes, he recognized the signs of burnout. Their conversations shifted from casual talk to serious questions. How long could she keep sacrificing herself for a show that refused to value her as an actress? Majors urged her to think about what she really wanted. His message was simple: fame was fleeting, but dignity mattered more. At the same time, Farrah's co-stars were navigating the pressures differently. Kate Jackson, often seen as the intellectual anchor of the trio, threw herself into the work, earning respect from producers by offering script notes and taking control where she could. Jaclyn Smith, steady and adaptable, played the part expected of her without stirring conflict. Farrah stood apart. The imbalance between how the producers treated the three women was clear. Kate was taken seriously, Jaclyn was kept safe from criticism, but Farrah was exploited as the glamorous showpiece. That hierarchy cut deeply. The studio wasn't blind to Farrah's frustrations, but they chose to interpret them as attitude rather than ambition. Rumors began circulating among crew members that she was difficult, a word often used in Hollywood to dismiss women who pushed back against the roles assigned to them. But Farrah's demands weren't outrageous. She wasn't asking for more money or fewer hours. She was asking for respect, for storylines that reflected her talent rather than her appearance. Privately, Farrah began to consider her options. The thought of breaking her contract terrified her: lawsuits, public backlash, a tarnished reputation. But the alternative was even worse: staying on a show that was draining her spirit and trapping her in a role she despised. Every day on set after Angels on Wheels reinforced the choice she knew she had to make. The harder she worked, the clearer it became that she was expendable to the producers, valued more for the poster on a wall than for the work she put into her craft. By the final weeks of filming Season 1, Farrah's mind was made up. She confided in a small circle that she would not return for Season 2, no matter what ABC offered. For her, the question wasn't whether she could handle the workload, but whether she could live with herself if she stayed. It was a decision that would shake Hollywood. But in those private moments, At home with Majors, sitting quietly in her trailer, weighing the cost, Farrah realized the truth. She wasn't just leaving a show. She was fighting for the right to be more than the angel the world wanted her to be. When word broke that Farrah Fawcett was leaving Charlie's Angels after only one season, Hollywood reeled. It was unheard of. Television stars didn't just walk away from #1 shows, especially not when they were at the center of the storm. For ABC, the announcement landed like a bombshell. They had built the series' identity around Farrah's face, her hair, her smile. To lose her so quickly threatened not only the future of the show, but the network's pride. The press wasted no time in spinning the story. Headlines framed Farrah's departure as betrayal. Tabloids speculated about catfights on set, whispering of jealousy between the Angels. Some painted her as ungrateful, a diva who didn't understand how lucky she was. Others suggested her marriage to Lee Majors was pulling her away from Hollywood. In reality, the truth was simpler and far more daring. Farrah was unhappy, and she was willing to risk her career to reclaim her identity. But that explanation didn't make for scandalous copy, so the narrative hardened around drama and rumor. Inside ABC, panic spread. The executives had seen this coming in whispers, but they hadn't believed Farrah would actually follow through. Their star was walking out the door, and nothing, money, fame, or persuasion, seemed to stop her. Behind closed doors, some network officials expressed outright fury. They accused her of being reckless, of biting the hand that fed her. But Farrah didn't flinch. To her, staying meant sacrificing her dignity. Leaving meant taking control. The effect on her co-stars was complicated. Kate Jackson, already respected for her seriousness, seemed unfazed, ready to continue without her. Jaclyn Smith, loyal and graceful, carried the disappointment quietly, but supported Farrah's choice privately. Both women understood, in different ways, the pressures Farrah faced, even if they didn't carry them as heavily themselves. Still, the trio that America had fallen in love with was broken, and nothing could disguise the absence of the angel who had captured the world's imagination. Then came the announcement of her replacement, Cheryl Ladd. At first, the decision was met with skepticism. Could anyone fill the void Farrah left behind? Fans doubted it, critics questioned it, and ABC braced for backlash. Yet Ladd, with her bright energy and approachable charm, managed to soften the blow in later seasons. But no matter how successful Cheryl became, Farrah's shadow loomed over the show. Viewers never forgot the woman who had defined the Angels in their very first year. For Farrah, the decision was both terrifying and liberating. She was stepping into uncertainty, walking away from a guaranteed hit in search of something greater. Friends warned her that she might regret it, that leaving television's biggest show could sink her career. But Farrah didn't see it that way. For her, the real danger wasn't leaving, it was staying. The fallout left the industry buzzing, the tabloids salivating, and the audience stunned. But for Farrah Fawcett, the choice had already been made the moment she skated off the derby track in Angels on Wheels. Now the rest of the world was simply catching up. If the shock of Farrah Fawcett leaving Charlie's Angels rattled Hollywood, the lawsuit that followed turned it into a full-blown war. ABC and the show's producers refused to let her departure go unanswered. Farrah had signed a contract. To them, she wasn't just walking away from a television show. She was breaking a legal agreement that cost the network millions in advertising and merchandising. Within weeks of her announcement, the matter shifted from gossip columns to courtrooms. ABC's lawyers moved quickly, filing a breach of contract suit that made headlines across the country. The network argued that Farrah owed them years of work and that her absence would cripple their flagship show. Behind the legal jargon, though, the message was simpler. No star, no matter how beloved, could defy the system and get away with it. This was about control as much as money. Farrah, however, didn't back down. With Lee Majors and her own team of attorneys by her side, she held firm. She wasn't asking for more money. She wasn't trying to renegotiate terms. She wanted freedom. Freedom to pursue film roles, to chase the career she envisioned before Charlie's Angels turned her into a cultural symbol. In private meetings, she made it clear, if the price of that freedom was a fight, then so be it. The lawsuit became a tabloid circus. Reporters framed it as proof that Farrah was difficult, temperamental, even reckless. Rumors swirled about bitter rivalries with Kate Jackson and Jaclyn Smith, though little of it was true. In reality, the co-stars had little involvement in the legal drama, but gossip sold papers, and the narrative of a fractured sisterhood proved irresistible to editors. Eventually, both sides realized a compromise was the only way forward. A drawn-out trial risked damaging the show as much as it did Farrah's reputation. The settlement allowed her to step away from her role as a full-time Angel, but required her to return for 6 guest appearances spread over the following seasons. It was a face-saving arrangement. ABC could claim victory, and Farrah could walk into the next chapter of her career without chains around her ankles. Those guest spots became events in themselves. Each time Farrah returned, ratings spiked, proving her enduring power with audiences. But they also underscored the decision she had made. She wasn't meant to linger in the shadow of Charlie's Angels. She was carving out her own path, even if it meant bruises in courtrooms and headlines that questioned her every move. The lawsuit was supposed to humble her, to prove that no one was bigger than the machine. Instead, it cemented her as one of the few stars bold enough to challenge it. Farrah Fawcett left Charlie's Angels not quietly, not politely, but on her own terms. And though the settlement carried conditions, the message was unmistakable. She refused to be owned by anyone but herself. Farrah Fawcett's decision to leave Charlie's Angels after just 1 season did more than rattle Hollywood. It reshaped the way stars were seen in the industry. At the time, television contracts were ironclad. Actors were expected to endure whatever workload or image the studio demanded. To walk away, especially at the height of success, was considered career suicide. Yet Farrah defied those expectations, and in doing so, she rewrote the rules for generations of actresses who followed. For ABC, her departure was both a crisis and a lesson. The network scrambled to fill the void, and Cheryl Ladd was brought in as the new blonde Angel. To many fans, she was a welcome addition, fresh, energetic, and capable of easing the transition. But no matter how well Ladd performed, the absence of Farrah lingered. The chemistry of the original trio had captured lightning in a bottle, and when one of them disappeared, the spark was never quite the same. The series continued, yes, but it was forever marked by the loss of the woman who had defined it in its very first year. For Farrah, the gamble paid off. The lawsuit had been grueling, the headlines often cruel, but she proved that she was more than a television image. She pursued film roles, appearing in projects like Somebody Killed Her Husband, and later winning acclaim for performances in The Burning Bed and Extremities. These roles gave her the dramatic recognition she craved, earning her Emmy and Golden Globe nominations. Critics who had once dismissed her as just a poster girl began to acknowledge her as a serious actress. The career path she carved would never have been possible if she had remained skating in circles on network television. The cultural impact of her departure was even greater. For many women in Hollywood, Farrah's stand became a symbol of independence. She challenged the idea that actresses had to accept whatever role was given to them, no matter how shallow or demeaning. She proved that walking away could be more powerful than staying, that dignity was worth more than ratings. In the years that followed, other stars cited her as an example when negotiating contracts or demanding creative control. And then there was the myth. Over time, fans began to ask the same question: what made her finally leave? Rumors circulated about feuds, money, or secret scandals, but those who looked closely saw that the answer had been right there in Season 1. Episode 15, Angels on Wheels, became the symbolic moment of her decision, the tipping point where spectacle replaced substance, where Farrah realized she was skating away from her dreams instead of toward them. That single episode, once just another entry in a hit series, became a marker in television history. It wasn't the glitz of the derby or the high-energy stunts that mattered, but what the cameras didn't show: an actress deciding her future in real time. For Farrah Fawcett, Angels on Wheels wasn't just a storyline, it was her turning point, the moment she claimed her freedom and changed the industry forever. Farrah Fawcett's story on Charlie's Angels is remembered as a whirlwind of fame, beauty, and instant success. But behind the posters and the glamour was a woman who refused to be trapped in an image that didn't honor her talent. To audiences, Angels on Wheels was just another colorful episode of a hit series. To Farrah, it was something else entirely, a reminder that she was being used for spectacle, not artistry. Her decision to walk away shocked executives, angered tabloids, and stunned fans. It sparked lawsuits and fueled rumors, but it also showed a rare courage. Farrah didn't leave because she couldn't handle the pressure. She left because she refused to settle. She risked everything to prove she was more than the fun angel, and in doing so she changed television history. Decades later, her departure still echoes. It was more than a career move. It was a statement. One episode, one choice, and one bold refusal to be defined by anyone else's vision. Farrah Fawcett left Charlie's Angels on her own terms, and that is the legacy that still shines brightest. For more emotional stories, check out this video.